Zaxby's, indescribably good.
Well, hello, Raider fans, and welcome back to the Rocky Hidalgo Show, sponsored by Zaxby's. I'm Kurt Shreiner, and tonight we're going to review that Wheeler overtime thriller and then look ahead to the Milton Eagles game, Rocky. But you had us all on pins and needles Friday night. You're down 28-21, a little bit more than 2 minutes to go. Wheeler's got the ball, and big hit on defense, turnover, and you go in for the tying touchdown to send the game into overtime.
Look, it's exciting to win a game like that. We don't want to be in that position. We didn't
Right.
play from between 7 minutes in the first quarter and the last 3 minutes of the game. That time in there, we didn't play real well. I think we did a lot of good things defensively. We made a ton of stupid mistakes, 189 penalties, 3 turnovers. I mean, it was as bad as we played at times all year long. And they played really hard. I'll give it to Coach Collins, and I knew that it's a big game for the Wheeler against Walton, and their kids came and they really wanted to win that game, but fortune smiled on us, and Monty Parker went in there, created a turnover, and at that moment we got the ball back. I was really confident we were going to win when we scored that last touchdown. Felt like we had time to do those things, and kind of went as scripted. The onside kick wasn't real pretty, but we got it back anyway.
Yeah, you did. You did. The you talked about some of the statistics with the penalties and the turnovers, but one of the good things that did come out of this was you were 5 for 5 in the red zone, and I mean that's so you were efficient when you got down close, and you were able to take advantage of that turnover at the end. Wheeler 0-4, tough defeat when you have probably your biggest rival, somebody you haven't beaten in a couple of years, and to have it go that way. Coach Collins got a tough week of practice, I imagine, with his kids.
And I spoke with him after the game and spoke with him Saturday. And Michael's a really good man. He's a heck of a football coach. Done a great job. And they just had some hard luck over there. And sometimes that's the world just kind of deals that to you. They had the issue with the quarterback, and they struggled through a couple of weeks when that was going on. Got the off week, kind of came through the other side and played really hard and honestly should have won the game. But they didn't, and if you coach long enough, you have seasons like this. I think we had one last year where we got everybody hurt and things just kind of went bad for us. You just kind of have to fight through and rally your troops and get them ready to play next week.
For somebody who's been watching high school football in the area, I mean, and this is hard to say or hard to understand if you're a young man playing for Wheeler, but you can see the difference on the field dramatically. You think 4 years ago, and how they've progressed, and so guys. You're doing a good job out there. Keep that up. Rocky, it was a wild night in our region. It was a little bit like the SEC East was on Saturday afternoon. Milton comes into Lassiter and just gets throttled 31-3. But the big one is there's Cherokee finally getting that upset win, 28-21 over Etowah. Hey, you're 3-1 in the region. You're tied for first place. The whole season's in front of you. Going to Milton, it's always a tough place for us to play.
Yeah, regardless, we've been telling the kids, obviously we really want to win that game against Lassiter, but for us, if we win out, we've got to share the region championship. Right. Whether if it's either we'll be guaranteed a home playoff game, whether it's the 1 or 2 seed.
Right.
So the things that we want, our goals are still in front of us. What we have to do is we've got to make some strides in terms of the level of intensity that we play with over the course of 48 minutes, but also our mental focus and discipline. We're just making too many mistakes and too many errors. It's something that's kind of plagued us all year long. We played some really good football at times, and that's what's disappointing is to see us play great football at spurts and then play so poorly. It's kind of there's nothing in between. So we're our kids want to do well. They want to go out and compete. Our kids play hard. It's not an issue of effort. They practice hard. But I think we can do a better job with our focus and kind of get in there and win these next 3 and have a share of the region championship at worst case scenario.
And there are 3 tough games. I mean, you've got Milton on the road, Etowah on the road, and then a much improved Roswell team who upset Woodstock on Friday comes to Raider Valley for the last game and for senior night. In a kind of a topsy-turvy, you kind of don't know what you're going to get from your team on any given week, and I'm sure coaching staff at Milton's wondering how they went from where they were to losing 31-3 on Friday night. What are you doing with the team, Rocky? What are you and the coaching staff doing to kind of bring that focus? Let's just look at this Friday night, guys, and then we'll take it from there after the game's over.
Well, I think you have to go out and you have to sell them on a game plan. This is, and sell them that this is what we're going to do to win. You have to keep those things, simple, and make sure we're teaching the basics, the fundamentals of the, keep everything small. If we keep it, focus on the details, the big things will take care of itself. Yeah. The other side is we try to replicate some of the breaks that we see in games. Like halftime breaks, we've struggled coming out of a half on offense. So what we've tried to do is schedule about 20-minute blocks where we don't play offense in practice, so we can go out there and try to flip the switch and get back out and understand that this is the time to go play ball. So we're trying to replicate some of those things. Whether they'll be effective or not, I don't know. I think, I think our kids genuinely want to do well and perform well. Things like, drop passes and penalties and missed assignments, or things we try to talk to them about why they did that. And, a lot of times they're confused with some things. We're doing some things differently on offense, and I think that's probably led to a little confusion with some of our kids, and we're trying to do a better job of teaching those things and coach those things to eliminate some of those mistakes.
Milton's been a place where we've had pretty good success. We've won a lot of games there, but the games are always very close. They're hard fought. They kind of go back and forth and back and forth. What are we going to see from Milton this year when we make the trip over there on Friday night?
I think they have a very good football team. They're very similar to us in a lot of ways. I think the last two games, if you look, the two games that they lost, they've turned the football over a ton, and that's something they were not doing before. And so I'm sure Coach DeCristofaro is preaching to his kids they've got to hold on the football.
Yeah.
They're a big physical team on both sides of the ball, the lines of scrimmage. They've got a very good linebacker core defensively. Offensively, they've got some really, really good backs. I mean, you'll see some guys over there that are as good as anybody we played this year who can really tote the mail. And they've got 2 or 3 of them that can do it. So they're very scary on offense. They'll just kind of get in there, and they're going to run some power football at you. And the backs do a great job of kind of finding that seam and cramming it in there and getting 3, 4, 5 yards and wearing you down and getting a big play.
Well, we've got this big game against the Eagles on Friday night. We're going to take a bit of a break here, hear from Zaxby's. We're going to come back and talk to Coach Hidalgo about old coaches because we've lost a couple of them this week, and we ought to talk about some of them. So let's hear a word from our sponsor, Zaxby's, and we'll be right back.
Zaxby's, indescribably good.
So, Rocky, you and I grew up a couple of years apart. You grew up in Louisiana. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. But, some guys are kind of iconic. And this past week, we lost Bum Phillips, 90 years old. God bless him. And then Don James died this afternoon, the old Washington coach. And, last week, Rocky, we were sitting on the couch. So, I came in here today thinking, in honor of Coach Phillips, I was going to wear a pair of cowboy boots. When you were a Steelers fan growing up, when Coach Phillips brought the Love You Blue Oilers into town, it was always going to be an interesting game with Earl Campbell, Dan Pastorini, and all those guys. But who are some of the coaches that have influenced you as you have become you went from being an assistant coach for so many years here, defensive coordinator at Walton, to the head coach. But who are some of the coaches that have influenced you and that you admire and follow from a coaching techniques perspective?
Probably as a defensive coach, Bill Ornsberger. Bill Ornsberger wrote a book called Coaching Defensive Football, and it's kind of the Bible for a lot of football coaches. It's a great book. It's beginning to end. It's all about running the 3-4 defense, and it's something that we've used going back 12 or 13 years. It's just a great fundamental reference point for coaching football. And that would be one. I spent a lot of time with John Tenuta when he was at Georgia Tech, and I was very fortunate. I spent some evenings down there, and Coach Tenuta taught me a lot of football, and I mean, literally took me from kind of point A. And I remember the first night we went down there, we spent 4 nights down there, or 4 hours down there, and he started with the history of defensive football.
Right, exactly. Don't ever ask him that question.
In like 1867 or something, right after the Civil War.
Jim Thorpe.
And that was pretty much it. And how this guy was the first guy to use this defense, and it evolved to stop this particular offense. And what was amazing, he did it all off the top of his head. He did over 100 years of defensive football history, and and we filled a notebook up just talking about defenses and how they evolved, and something that I'd never considered and thought about, but it was really important in looking back because we use a lot of the things that evolved to stop the triple option back in the 60s and 70s. We use a lot of those things now against the spread option and with people doing the gun. It's very similar concepts. So we kind of went back to that point to use a lot of those things. I mean, obviously, you look at some of the guys that are coaching today. I mean, Nick Saban is one of those guys that, for me, I've read Coach Saban's book, and one of the things he preaches about is the process, is focus on the process, focus on the process. And we try to preach that to our kids. At the start of every season, every school is dreaming of holding that trophy up.
Right.
Everybody dreams about those things, but the really great teams are going to be the ones that focus on the process of being here on Monday and focusing on the things that they need to get better on. Everybody goes to practice, but who's out there at practice really focusing on the thing they have to get better at this moment? And I think he does a great job selling that to his kids. You can see it in his football program, coaching his kids. And then on top of some other guys, I think you look at some of the guys that run the spread. I mean, we're not a spread offense, but I see some of those guys, how aggressive they are in their play calling. And, we try to emulate some of that. You see us, we do more of that now, kicking onside kicks, fake punts. We try to be aggressive on all three areas of our football program. You see us now, we throw the ball deep more. We throw the post, we throw the fade routes and try to get those easy touchdowns. We want to be aggressive and force our other team to look over there and not know what to expect with fake punts and onside kicks and defensively to be aggressive. We want to have an offensive mentality on defense. So there's a lot of guys out there when you go out and on top of that, there's a lot of high school coaches. I think I spent a year here coaching with T. McFerrin. When T. McFerrin came over and coached our offense, I learned a great deal working with him. Guys like Dave Hunter, who coached the Brookwood program. Been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with Dave Hunter. There's Ed Dudley. I mean, Ed taught me a lot of football here. Probably first and foremost, Ed's probably taught me as much or more than anything about the game, about coaching, and what to do and what not to do. One of the things everybody learns is what to do, but also one of the things I learned from Ed is learn what not to do. Watch people when they struggle and learn how they deal with those struggles, and not only learn what to do but what not to do. It's very important. So many people always want to look at the keys to success. But one of the things you do when you struggle, how do you overcome adversity? And some people are better at that than others. I was very fortunate to learn that from Ed and try to do those things. So, they're kind of all over the place. NFL guys, I was telling you guys before, Bum Phillips. I remember him as a Saints coach, coach.
Yep.
When those awful days back with the Saints, when he traded for Earl Campbell. And brought him over to the Saints, and Earl Campbell was beat up and abused. And I remember Earl Campbell would tap his head to come out like that, and Bum Phillips would turn his back on him and look at the stands and just keep him in. Those are the days of having Bum Phillips run the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, they said that he came close one year. He did have a winning record overall in the NFL, mostly from his Oilers days. Coach Arnsberger was the LSU head coach, I guess, when you were growing up, but that he was also the defensive coordinator on the undefeated Dolphins team with Coach Shula. So
what he really did is, people don't realize this, when he went over and took over the San Diego Chargers defense when they played in the Super Bowl, and he went in and literally after like Game 6, he found that 55-60% of their defensive snaps, they were having mistakes. And he went in there, and everybody thinks you have to run these complicated schemes. He went in and basically threw out 70% of everything they did and simplified everything. And they became a championship caliber football team and championship caliber defense. And Junior Seau became a Hall of Famer and all those things because Bill Arnsberger went in there and said, we're making things so hard that, and so many checks, that they're screwing it all up. Let's make it simple and let the players play fast. And that's great advice for everybody.
Well, and don't you think in the high school game today, Rocky, there's a tendency to overcomplicate because there's so much information. You're watching so much college. You're watching so much pro football that, you can out-scheme yourself to death, but you still have 16, 17, 18-year-old boys dealing with school and all those types of things. I mean, keeping it simple and aggressive is still not a bad way to do it.
Yeah, and what we try to do is we always talk about Pandora's box. You can open Pandora's box offensively, defense. There's a lot of great things. I get emails and letters from people saying, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?" Well, there's only about 2 hours and 10 minutes of practice, and we can't coach everything. There's a lot of things as coaches we meet on Sunday that we want to do, and we finally look at most of it, probably 70% of it, and go, "We just don't have time to teach that.
Right.
We can't get good at that in 3 weeks." And you know, one thing is interesting about high school football is different than college, and really, especially the NFL. In the NFL, you see essentially one offense all year long, and everybody uses similar terminology. Offensively, there are 3 or 4 different types of defenses. Offensively, there are 3 or 4 different schools of offense, and you see essentially the same offense, the same type running plays, the same type passing plays all year long. College, there's a little more diversity in there. In the high school ranks, there's a ton of diversity.
Right.
You know, there are times where, you know, right now we're playing a lot of spread teams, but there was a time that we'd play 2 wing T teams, 4 spread teams, a triple option team, one doing a double slot, one doing the pro I option, and so you have to do something different every week. So you have to kind of what's your defensive philosophy grounded in, and you know the defenses we see are very different as well. You know, whereas 4-3-3-4, 3-5-3. I mean, people do so many different things at the high school level than they do at the college level. I mean, it really is defensively. There's a as crazy as it sounds, from one week to another, there's virtually no carryover on what we do because the schemes are usually so different.
Yeah.
Usually so different.
And we're going to see that tonight's Monday night. We'll see that in the pros because Josh Freeman is literally leaving with 2 weeks to walk into a new team, a new offense, and he's the starting quarterback. So.
A lot of the NFL teams use the same terminology. They 30 years ago they came up with that. They kind of use the same terminology simply because if one guy goes from this team over here to he's traded or goes as a free agent, he doesn't have to learn an entire new playbook. So a lot of the language is all the same.
Well, we're not going to be seeing Bum Phillips on Friday night, but we're going to see Rocky Hidalgo and the Raiders head to Milton to play the Milton Eagles. The Raiders are 4-3 overall, right? 3-1 in the region, which is the most important thing. We're tied for first place, folks. We've got 3 big games against Milton, Etowah, and Roswell. But I'm going to say it before the coach says it. One game at a time. First game is this Friday night against the Milton Eagles. We'll see you there, 7:30 kickoff at Milton. This has been the Rocky Hidalgo Show. I'm Kurt Shreiner, sponsored by Zaxby's. We'll see you at Milton Friday night.